Welcome to my podcast, Today's Dream, Tomorrow's Reality. My name is Vicki Poole. I'm a master transformational coach specializing in habit change. And this podcast is sponsored by the Enlightened Peach and is all about embracing our mosaic life. And some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life? Well, it is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. So change any one thing and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. I am your host, and I have a special guest with me today that I'll be introducing in just a moment. But if you have any ahas, questions, appreciations, please leave a comment or a voice message. And remember to like, subscribe, and share. So now let's get started. So this beautiful lady here is Ankhara. That's right, right?
Mhm.
Ankhara Rose. And she is in a group that I'm actually a member of. And she was in there one day and she was making posts, and I thought, oh, she sounds amazing. I want her on my podcast. So I reached out and we've had a chat since then. And so I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing with my audience all about your story. So let's open this up a little bit with you just sharing not what you're doing now, but how did you get to the place where you're at now?
Amazing. So thank you so much for having me. And before I even go into that, I just want to say how much I love the mosaic life. That's what, yeah,
Yeah.
that's my jam. My jam is embracing all of those pieces and very much tied into my story, right? As I think probably all of us, right? We have this
Yes.
crazy winding road and all of these parts of ourselves that, times we judge, but when we can embrace them, and that's really a big part of the work that I do, when we embrace all these parts, we get to live life holistically as our full selves. So that being said, so how did I get here? Oh my gosh, what a long and winding story. So, I'm born and raised in New Jersey. Don't say Jersey girl. Everyone's ever if that's
I'm
part
from
of your
Atlanta. I
lingo.
don't say that
Okay, I'm
anyway.
glad. I hear that all the time. But born and raised in New Jersey. Um, my I kind of have to talk about my family because that's the root, right?
Hmm.
That's our foundation. So my mom was just very unconventional, like not a hippie, like a mainstream hippie, but just like moved to the beat of her own drum. She was a child of Holocaust survivors, and
Oh, wow.
clearly like a lot of trauma came with that, and their way of just kind of moving through it, they're just a little bit different. And so that was my mom's story. My father was a heroin addict, right? So like right
Okay.
off the bat, times he was clean, times he was not. And this is the life that I was born into. I also have an older sister. And so, because of all of the turmoil in my family from the very beginning, my mother, who had this like very, I love my mom. She lives in my town. She's like my best friend, right? So, and I really appreciate the way that she raised me, because she always had this belief that her purpose as a mom was just to raise us to be fulfilled and happy, not to
Nice.
check off any boxes for
Yeah.
herself, right? Like none of that. It was never about her. And so as we were going through this drama and this trauma in our family, I mean, literally from the time I was 3, I was in therapy. I was in therapy. And,
Wow.
like it was how, like, so from the very,
Do
very
you feel
beginning
like
of my
that's
life.
more from, I don't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah,
I'll
no,
probably do
interrupt.
it a bunch of times, I will be honest.
Me too. So that's fine.
Just like we were sitting at the table, right? Um,
Exactly.
but do you think that's more from the fact that your father was a heroin addict? Does that because that I cannot, I don't have any experience with. I do have some experience with someone else who was a heroin addict that,
Hmm.
had an effect on my life, but
Hmm.
definitely not a parent.
Hmm.
And from what I know of that, it can be pretty drastic from, almost like someone who is bipolar, where it's like everything's great or it's not,
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you find that to be the
Yeah, well,
truth?
my experience, first of all, like that absolutely shaped my whole life because my father and I, like, I just loved him, right? As we do. And when he was clean, he was just wonderful. He was like a naturalist and like interested in science and technology way back before technology was, I mean, it was a thing, but not like
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
I'm in my 40s. So, um, but so my primary experience of my father was he was there and he was here with me and then he was gone. So it was again and again. That's my whole beginning
So
of my
that was
life
probably a
was
lot of abandonment issue.
so much abandonment,
Yeah.
so much like the joy of having and the heartbreak of losing. But that cycle, learning that again and again and again, like definitely put up some walls,
Mhm.
definitely created some schemas about like how I view the world and how much, like fast forward many years, but like really doing the work on myself and realizing how hard it is for me to let myself like really want what I want because there's always this feeling of like, yeah, but it's going to go away. I've had to learn how to embrace that, but that's for later on in the story because I'm still
Okay,
a
okay.
child here, okay? So all of that, like my mom she was wise, right? And so she was just like from the very little she knew about dealing with addiction, because that was not part of her world, she realized that like I needed a place where I could stay in touch with myself through all of this. And so I was. My dad was like kind of gone for good by the time I was 9, just
Mhm.
gone. And so it was my mother and my sister and I, and we had to move around a lot. We didn't have a lot of money. We spent 1 year living with my cousins and my aunt and uncle. Like there was just a lot of turmoil. But I mean, I should be really messed up based on my childhood, but I swear it was the fact that I always had this grounding cord to myself through therapy. Like I never there were times when I went over the edge, right? I'll get to that
Mhm.
in a minute, but like I still always knew who I was.
Yeah, and
You know?
part when you're saying that, part of it makes me think that so much of that, not only the therapy, but due to the mom that knew that you needed to be that way. And so just her knowing that probably helped to ground you in some ways because you could have gotten a mom that just kind of ignored the whole thing and let you just be, so bless you for having that mom and,
I
having
know.
that incarnation,
I know.
as your choice, right?
I really do feel lucky, right? And it's not
Yeah.
that mama's perfect because nobody's perfect, but like we do have, like, yeah, I just call it like this big picture wisdom that she had. And she just knew. Meanwhile, like years later, even just recently, I found out how hard that time was for her. She was keeping it together for us. And, in those moments also, like I'm sure that intuitively I felt that it was hard for her. My role in the family was also to kind of keep it all together. Like, don't let anybody know that things are not okay because mom can only handle so much and my sister can
Right.
only handle so much. So that was very much my
What
role in
age
the
difference
family.
were you and your sister?
My sister's about 5.5 years older.
Okay, so she's
So
a good
she
bit
was
older then.
like, and here's the thing about being in therapy though, and this is like a little bit, we're going real raw here. I
Oh,
hope that's okay,
that's
right? Like
good with me.
I have a memory of being 5 years old. I don't know if I've ever told this story publicly, but we're telling it here. I have a memory of being 5 years old and my father driving me. We live right outside of New York City. So him putting me in his car and bringing me into the city to score drugs. And I remember we're driving back. I remember driving back over the George Washington Bridge. There's this turn, right? And I remember turning to him at 5 years old and saying, people who do drugs, they're bad. Right. So I had some awareness. And I
Mhm.
remember him saying to me, well, like just very honestly, like, well, I do drugs. And at 5 years old, like how I think back sometimes, like I remember that moment. I'm getting emotional. I remember that moment. It was such a like eyes open. Like how could, like, my whole schema had to change. My whole
Yeah, how can this be my
understanding,
dad and know
right?
that he's saying that
Right.
he's
And
bad?
it's like I had to shift this belief of like, but I love you. But if
Yeah.
that's bad, like, so I feel like that was this core. experience in my life that allowed me to hold polarity. I
Mm,
don't know if that makes sense, but
it
like
does.
even from that age, I had to hold like this is bad, this is wrong, right? Like from a, a 5-year old,
Right.
drugs are bad, right? And they are. But, like having to hold that and then seeing my father beyond the drugs, right? Like knowing the truth of my father, knowing that he wasn't bad.
Right.
Right? And so I held this. When I look back, it was beautiful that I was told all of this and that I had a language for it and that I felt safe enough to speak up. I do think in some ways my childhood was cut short, right? Because to be 5 years old, 6 years old,
Right.
9 years
That's
old,
adult
15 years old,
conversations.
it's
Yeah.
an adult conversation. And I appreciate the way that my mom raised me as a human, not as a child. I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
she didn't baby me, she didn't talk down to me, she asked my opinion about things. But now I'm a parent, right? I've got a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I have like different boundaries as a parent than my mother did. I love some of what she did, but it's very important to me to preserve my children's childhood as much as I can because it's a short window.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, now they're 10 and 12 in the year 2024. So, it's
It's the
very
same as being
different than when I was
25,
10 and
right?
12. Right. So, yeah. So, should I just keep on rambling the story?
Just
Are you
keep
cool with
on.
that?
We're
Okay.
listening, or
Beautiful.
I'm
Okay.
listening
So,
for sure.
unfolding right now, I'm like, daughter, single parent, single family, moving around a lot, hit the teenage years, and now I went into my own experimentation with drugs and with sex and with all of these pieces, in retrospect, really trying to understand what was the thing that was more important than me, right? Because
Yeah.
that was, no matter how much therapy I had, there was still this core, we all have this core limiting beliefs, right? And
Hmm.
mine was, I'm not good enough, or I'm not important enough that he could choose, that he would choose me instead of that,
Yeah.
right? And so I went through my own journey, drugs in high school, and then it turned when I got into college, it shifted into an eating disorder. And so I had many years of addiction. um, I won't say like it wasn't severe, it wasn't crazy. I was walking the edge all the time, but there was something
So
about
you
me.
were more
Remember,
in an experimental
it was definitely
place.
experimental. It was pushing the edge. It was definitely escapism too.
Yeah.
It was yeah, I mean, I think part of it was youth, but part of it was this like seeking. Like I really, it wasn't conscious, but I
Yeah.
know there was some sort of quest to understand what life was like for him. I obviously wouldn't do heroin, right? Like I had limitations, but I did push the envelope a lot. But there was still, and I still think it's because of the therapy. Like I would push things so far, but both feet would never go over the edge. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, my I would go out with my girlfriends and they would be walking into the middle of the street in New York City. And I would be mama bear, 10 years younger than them, pulling them back no matter what was going on in here, like
Hmm.
still had this grip of like,
Well,
even to the point.
some of that probably comes from when you're in your family dynamic. You said you were the one that was trying to keep things together.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
you grow up that way, you still do that with your friends and all those different in your business and everything. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
you're like, oh, let me hold it all. I don't want it to get out of
Yes.
place.
And sometimes it's a blessing and sometimes
Yes,
it's a
that's right.
curse. So it helped me there, like for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, and I love that point because absolutely, right? Like the way that we learn to survive, that just comes with us. We can do all this subconscious reprogramming and personal work, but that's a tendency. It's almost like it's a deep groove that's very easy for us to fall into no matter
Hmm.
what's going on in our lives.
Yeah.
Um, so I kept this thread of truth to myself to the point where like even when things were really bad, my eating disorder, to be honest, was harder to overcome than the drugs. The drugs were like for fun. That did not feel fun.
So
That was
was the eating disorder, was it, anorexia? Was it
bulimia.
bulimia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I learned, I learned from I never went to treatment, but I'm like a seeker. So, and I like to be honest with myself. So I was even like, I'm like, wow, just like totally honest with myself. I'm like, wow, can I curse here?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't
I was just
care.
like, wow, this is really fucked up, you know, but I'm not ready to stop.
Yeah.
Right? And I would just have these conversations with myself through like the hardest times when I was like, wow, I'm doing really well. And then I'd relapse and I'd be like,
Can I
fuck,
ask you
like,
some questions about that if you don't
yeah,
mind?
please do.
Okay.
Please do.
Well, the
Yeah.
reason is because I don't know how I can't remember how much I shared when we talked earlier, but I've been on a diet roller coaster and everything my whole life. And I
Mm-hmm.
have had times where I did different legal drugs that were supposed to stop you from wanting to eat.
Yeah.
And then I have done the thing where I tried to throw up and everything,
Mhm.
but I could not seem to do it. It was like,
Mhm.
there's got to be a trick, but I have a really good gag reflex or something because I couldn't make it work. Thank
Bless you,
God.
and you're lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
Your
And
teeth are
then
thanking you, by the way.
I did the laxatives,
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
so many different things that just looking for that magic, that one thing that would make it different. And,
Mhm.
and it is amazing to me that I'm as normal as I am. And, but I did struggle with that my whole life to going from, I would get thin and then I've got pictures, I got really big and then I would get thin and really big. And that's how I
Mhm.
got into health coaching and life coaching was because I was
Mhm.
so tired of doing this shit over and over again. I said, I have either got to make peace with being really fat and just be okay with that, or
Mhm.
I've got to do something different without the diet. And that's how I got started in this whole arena that I'm in now with the hypnosis and,
Mhm.
and all that stuff because it was soul wrenching, to be in that place all the time. So I'm just curious, how you really got started with that and how you were able to overcome that.
Yeah, it's such a great question. So I was heavy, like I was pretty heavy in high school, and then moving into college. And I moved, I went away to college. I went to Baltimore from New Jersey, not super far. But I think things felt really out of control for me, and I would just binge to kind of not feel it, and was so uncomfortable that I would purge after. And yeah, like it started like it was not a thing, but then all of a sudden, very quickly, it just became a thing. And it was a lot of, I wouldn't say that I struggled with my weight my whole life. Like I was heavy in high school and really confident, like probably the most confident I was, and I was at least 60 pounds more than I weigh now. Like I didn't mind being big, and I don't really think that my eating disorder had much to do with my weight at all. I
Mhm.
think it had to do with control. Um, and
So
even
how does that look like control, if you don't mind my
well,
asking?
it was like finally remember that conversation about like, well, I had to keep it all together. When I finally let myself not keep it together, I would go so far. And then the purging was this illusion of, well, now get yourself back together. Right. It was
Okay.
almost this, I don't know if that makes sense, but it was
Well,
almost
let
like
me
I
ask
was
you,
in
so were you
control.
when you were doing that, were you also doing massive exercise and stuff too?
No, no. It was really
Well,
just that.
the
And
reason I'm
and by the way,
asking
I didn't lose any weight doing that.
oh, yeah,
That's the other thing, right? Because
yeah.
like,
Well, the reason I'm asking, there's a show on, I can't think it's on Apple TV, I can't remember, it's called Physical.
mm,
Have you seen that?
yes, I did see
Okay,
physical.
and you
It
remember
was a little triggery for me, to be
yeah, I
honest.
bet,
Yes.
because, it was amazing to me, the voice in her head,
Oh yeah.
as she's going through that. So anybody that has been curious about how somebody can get in that space and really be so attached to it, watch this show because, I mean,
Whew.
it was
Yes.
like, holy shit, and
Yeah.
but I remember, like, for me, it could have been a little bit of controllable. It was more that I was so out of control with my eating, and I
Mm,
was fat, and I wanted to not have the effects of all this
yeah.
eating. And when I was in college, right before a big event was coming up where everybody had to fit in their dresses and stuff, oh, they were still eating like crazy in the dining hall or going out to eat. But every day in the bathroom, you could hear them, different
Oh.
people making
Mm,
themselves throw up. And
mm,
that's when I tried it. Was I thought, well,
mhm,
that's it. That's the answer, but I couldn't
mhm.
seem to do it, and thank
Oh,
God. But,
thank
you know,
God. Yes.
it's
Yeah.
bigger than we could ever imagine, that is going on. So I'm sorry.
Well, and I have to say, like, I mean, this will go into a whole existential conversation, right? But
Mhm.
I actually have this belief that the way that women treat their bodies is a direct reflection of how humanity treats the earth. I mean,
Mm.
when I say existential, I I believe that we have been culturally indoctrinated or programmed or influenced. When you focus on your body and when your body has to be perfect, when a human body that is not perfect has to be perfect, boy, does that take a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And how convenient that women are putting so much energy into something other than whatever else they could be putting their energy into. Then I mean, think about, right, those times, right, like the times of dieting, right, because everyone, we've all been dieting for years, right, like
Right.
how much energy it took to
Concentration.
plan, to feel guilty, right, like all of the pieces of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
massive.
Yeah.
And I like I said, like I didn't go to treatment to heal. Actually, the way that I healed was personal development. And I'm a teacher, just like I'm just naturally a teacher, been teaching forever. And so I decided to just learn everything I could. And then I created a little support group for myself
Oh,
of
nice.
people. And we just kind of met and
Yeah.
talked about this stuff. And
The first meetup.
yeah, it was a meetup actually. It
Yeah, was
was
it?
literally a meetup in New York City, right? And some of the people got better and some didn't,
Yeah.
right? But I did.
Yeah.
I did. I learned how to heal, but I will say the biggest, like, it feels so strange, but I feel like what set me on my whole path for my business in many ways was one book that helped me heal. And the book is called Intuitive Eating.
Hmm.
And the whole premise of the book is diets don't work. And the reason that we eat out of control is because we do not have relationships with our bodies.
Yeah.
And so the book just teaches us like super simple steps to like how to start listening to your body. And that became the metaphor for everything for me. It was almost like going back to my like roots of going to therapy, because when you're hurting yourself consistently, right, whether it is taking diet pills or whatever, we're not honoring our bodies, right? We're treating our body like a burden, we're treating it like a slave, we're abusing it, we're betraying it, we're judging it, right? That's not a partnership.
Right.
And so it was like I had to find my connection with my body again. And I'm not saying like love your body, because when you hate your body or you judge your body, it's a very big leap from judgment to
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
For me, it was just like, hey, my body's a body. Hey,
Yeah.
my body's relying on me to treat it well so that I can survive and live a long life, right? It was those kinds of shifts, and really, just beginning to learn how to listen to
Yeah.
myself differently.
And it's funny that you mentioned that because that's one of my big things when I work with my clients, and I have a Body Beautiful program that's going to be coming out in February.
Mm,
And it's all about, you know, well, not all of it, but a lot of it is about finding the beauty in the body that you have and
yes.
appreciating
Ugh,
for what it does. And that doesn't mean that you're accepting it just as it is. If you want to change it, you can still change it, but you
right?
can't change anything that you hate.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
A
yeah. So
hundred
that's the
percent.
thing. And, so with some people, it depends on who the client is. I have them go through a cleanse, and that's to rid them of all the toxins and the
Mhm.
sugars and the caffeines and all the different things. because you can't listen to a body that's addicted to things
You
because
can't.
it's speaking a different language.
It's speaking the language of dopamine, right?
Yes,
Like
yes.
that's it.
And so, like recently I had a client that she did the cleanse and she when she started adding foods back in, she added in her first one was going to be gluten because she loved bread.
Mhm.
So she had one piece of bread and got so sick, like she had the flu.
Wow.
So I said, well, don't eat anymore because normally, you do it for 2 days and then you cleanse and you add another thing. I said,
Mhm.
don't eat anymore. Go ahead and do a 2-day cleanse
Mhm.
and then you can add something else. And I said, if you feel really strong about it and you want to try again, you can.
Mhm.
But just one piece of toast and you've got that kind of reaction, you may not have celiac disease, but you definitely have a severe sensitivity to gluten.
Right.
And so,
Absolutely.
and I told her, I said, you've probably had the effects of this forever. You just thought it was something else. And so that's the beauty of doing a cleanse and getting a clean slate so you can
Mm.
hear what your body's saying because listening to your body is the paramount to anything that you do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. I always say like your body, your heart, right? Like these your soul and the mind, right? I know
Yes.
we make the mind a bad guy, but the mind is not a bad guy. It's a
Yes.
helpful tool, right? Like it's supposed to
Well,
help us.
without it, we would be stuck, right?
Without us, yes, exactly. This conversation certainly wouldn't be happening, right? So I completely agree, right? And like I think that we're going in a different direction here,
Hell,
right?
who cares? It's meant
But
to be, right?
when I think about the modern world and I think about technology and I think about sugar and I think about TV and I think about social media, did I say social media? Social media, right? Like all of these things stop us from hearing ourselves. They all separate us. They all keep us distracted from listening. And I don't think it's a big conspiracy theory. Some people might think it is, like some there's some orchestrator on the top. I just think it's a dopamine thing and the people have figured out like, "Oh, when I give this person dopamine, they stay on my app longer." Like I just think, that that's all it is.
Well,
And they're not even thinking
just
about
look at
dopamine,
TV
right?
commercials, that's been going on forever. And
Mhm.
that's what that is too. It hijacks you, it almost hypnotizes you into a certain place so that you want their product,
Absolutely.
you know?
My kids grew up in an era without, we don't have cable TV. We've only had like, Netflix or, like whatever it is without
Streaming
commercials,
services. Yeah.
yeah. And so like now when they watch regular TV and the commercials are on, they're what is this? And I'm like, oh,
What
you
a
have
waste
no
of my
idea.
time.
Right? And then of course, what's the first thing they do? Hey mom, I think I need this
Yeah.
thing. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you've been hijacked, my friend. But you're totally right. Like we've all grown up with that. And I think that, we can go and we can judge it and we can make it wrong. But for me, I feel like an easier path, right? Kind of like what you're saying is like, well, we have to accept that it's there, right? And us being pissed about it or feeling like if we feel like a victim to it, that's not empowering, right? So
Right.
like, yeah, this is the way the world is. Now we bring in the awareness. And so now we have some choice, right? And so
Yeah.
maybe the commercial comes on and we mute it, or maybe we set a timer for how long we're on social media, or maybe we do a cleanse and we say, this whole weekend, my phone's going to be in a lockbox and I'm going to survive and life will go on without me checking my, email every
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
have to do those things.
it's funny because, um, now this day and time, our phone is attached to us, like mine's right here, right?
Yeah, yeah, mine's right there.
It's on silent, so in case somebody calls, it's not going to interrupt anything, but it's right here.
Yeah.
And then I have a business phone that's in the other room, so I have two phones that I'm working with. And the interesting thing is that one day I set my phones down next to my purse and I was leaving and I was going somewhere and I was in a car with someone else.
Mhm.
And just a little ways down the road, I went to get my phone and it wasn't there. I said, "Oh my God, we got to go back." And they said, "No, we don't have time. We've got to go." Well, I said, "Well, then you've got to message." My daughter was at work. I said, "You've got to message my daughter and tell
Mhm.
her that I'm." out of commission right now. If she needs you, call her. I mean, it was like before this, because I'm a lot older than you. And so I remember when I left my house to go to my friend's house. I had to call when I got there because
Mhm.
until I got there, nobody could get in touch with me.
Right.
And then I would say, "I'm here." And then when I was coming home, I would call again. I'd say, "I'm on my way home." And you left your house, nobody could connect with you. You might could
Nobody.
stop and get a payphone if you wanted, but it's just amazing to me that now people not only can connect so quickly, but so many people have the little app on their phone so that they can track everybody they know.
Oh, I know. I don't do any tracking because I find it kind of creepy. Like I
Yeah,
and I know some people love it, but like for me personally, I'm like, I don't, that's too much connection. I need a
yeah,
little, give me a little space.
yeah,
Nobody know
yeah.
where I am, please. And I don't need to know where you're at. Even my kids, I don't check. And I think about that all the time too, right? Like we're in the house that my husband grew up in, and we're in a little town, a little suburb outside of New York City in New Jersey. And this street, like, it was, sorry, hold on. And this street was, speaking of phone going off, it was like a tree-lined street with a bunch of kids. And, my husband tells stories about like, and he's not much older than me. He's, 40 in his mid 40s. And his mom would be like, come home when the lights turn on, when the street lights come on. And that was the only rule. He didn't even have to call where he was going,
Yeah.
right? He just went out and then he came back. And I don't know what would happen if he didn't come back or if he came back late. I'm assuming they would worry, but like there was none of this like hyper. It's hard not to be a helicopter parent when you are tethered to your child, even when they're being independent.
Yeah.
So
But I can say it's a
yeah,
different time now.
it
But
is.
there was probably the same shit going on, but it's just it wasn't in our face.
Yeah.
So we didn't know it. And I'm kind of a proponent too that what you focus on is what you get, right? So I think sometimes the fact that we can be so hyper focused on everything that can go wrong, that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes just kind of brings that into our field of vision. And so maybe, like I said, maybe it was happening then, but because it wasn't right here where you focused on it all the time, we didn't experience it in the same
Yeah.
way. I
Yeah,
could be
absolutely.
wrong. That's just my opinion.
I mean, I think that I read an article that said that like there was way more crime there. Like it was
Oh,
more dangerous for kids and we had no idea, right? We just did our thing.
yeah,
And like most of us survived, I'm guessing, like at least in this part of the world, and
yeah.
yeah, but I completely agree, right? Like if you're focused on all the fears, then even when things go right, you're gonna feel like you're not safe.
Yeah.
And if you're focused on the joy, then even when things go wrong, you're going to find the moments of beauty and the moments of joy. And we have
The
to
learning
build that
experience.
muscle of our attention and what we
Yeah.
focus on, right? Like that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. All
That's
right. I
huge.
know I got us way off where we were going because get back
I
to your
love it.
story.
I love it. Where was I?
Um, you
I think it was
were
I think
you
it
were
was I think I was
finishing up a
sobering
little
up
bit
and
with the
cleaning up.
bulimia thing.
Yes, yeah.
How you got rid of it.
Yeah. So I found this book, and like right around when I started to apply this intuitive eating to my life, I was maybe out of college in my last year. I didn't last long in Maryland because of the addiction, because of that. I was about a year and a half there, and then it just I just wanted to come home. So I transferred to a local college and came back to live with my mom, which was much better for me. Um, and I think that I don't even, it's a little foggy to be honest, but like I got out of college and I got like, I got a job teaching at a learning center and was kind of doing my thing. Um, and I was really interested in like, industrial organizational psychology for some reason that was like super
I don't even know
interesting
what
to
that
me in
is, but
college.
go ahead.
It's basically like consulting in business, like how
Okay.
can you keep people motivated and healthy in business. I don't know why that was interesting to me, but I was just like, I'm gonna go get a job in HR. So I found a temp agency and got like a little job in HR in this company, and I was so miserable. I hated that job. That was the only job I've ever had that I hated so much. I don't know if it was just being in a corporation or just being in that role, but right, like I don't know, maybe 3 months into that, I think it was actually my father who had cleaned up and we had built a relationship. I skipped that whole part, but we were fine. He had a friend who was a life coach, and he
Mm,
just randomly sent me an email. He goes, check out what this person's doing. And I contacted her, and she was a life coach. And I said, well, where did you get trained? And she said, oh, this place called CTI, Coaches Training Institute. And I said, I want to do that. So I was about 24, 23, 24, like young, right?
yeah.
And I flew to Minneapolis where my dad was living and they had a training there. And so I started this journey of becoming a life coach at like in my early 20s.
Nice.
And from there took a year-long leadership training program. And, you know, I guess I was always meant to be an entrepreneur. Like when I really look back, I was always like for a long time, I was always like, I was tutoring, I was doing something. As soon as I found out about coaching, I was coaching. I never had the business acumen. Like that was not even in my wheelhouse. Remember, I was raised by someone who said, just be fulfilled. So I was like, I'll
Yeah.
just do what I'm good at, which was that. And I didn't even talk about, I've been a musician since I was 13. So I would play some
Oh, what kind
music
of
and I do,
musician?
do these things. Yeah, I'm a singer-songwriter. I had a pretty solid career as a commercial singer-songwriter for many
Oh
years.
man, sing us
Yeah.
something.
I can't. I can't.
Oh,
No, I
I'm just
can't.
teasing. I'm just teasing.
I'll
I
send
just
you a
wanted to
link
put you
though.
on the spot.
Yeah. It's funny. I have an interesting relationship with music now, but
Yeah.
that's also a part of what I do. So I've always been somebody who's been entrepreneurial. And so I'm kind of skipping forward,
I'm
right?
in so
Like,
awe. I'm just telling
yeah.
you, I'm in awe. Go ahead.
Are you not entrepreneurial?
Oh yeah, I am,
Oh,
but
you are.
I didn't start this coaching journey until I was in
Mm.
my 50s.
Mm.
So I think,
Mhm.
man, would it have been amazing to have had that idea at that age,
Mm.
because it's just the growth that I've had in myself from the time I started my health coaching journey. Because what happened with me was, like I said, I was heavy and I wanted to get rid of all that stuff. Well, at
Mhm.
first I thought, well, I'll hire a coach. And I thought,
Mhm.
I think I would be more accountable if I became a coach.
Yes.
If I pay all this money for school,
Yes.
then I will do what it says to do. And even if I don't teach anybody else and it helps me, then it'll be money well spent. Well, I did health coaching, life coaching. I did a mastery program with them that was a year long, and then I got into hypnosis. And so it's just been, it's like one, it's like it just starts everything just turning to where, oh, now this looks delicious and this looks delicious. And so
Mm.
it's been a journey from then. But my family was all entrepreneurs. So my family was hairstylists, they had their own salon, and
Mhm.
so that part of my life was there most of my life, but
Mm.
not the self-development
Yeah.
coaching kind of thing. Now they did business development kind of stuff
Mm.
for their
Mhm.
business, but I don't remember there being like life coaching kind of stuff, so
Yeah.
it was like the things that they did was like, how to win friends and influence people and
Yes.
those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So it was
It's
different.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I feel like, we're in this really unique era where we understand that the development of self as an entrepreneur is essential,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
we hit these blocks in our business that aren't about business. I mean, we hit business blocks too, but there's so many blocks that are mindset. You do hypnosis, right? Like the
yeah,
power of mindset, the power of our limiting beliefs can literally, when we can unlock that, we can reach such higher levels in our business. We are at this place, thank goodness, right? Because I think that it makes more responsible leaders when we're taking our own personal growth into our hands, when that's like a non-negotiable for us,
Right.
and then we're growing a business, that's how we get better leaders, you
Yeah.
know?
And it's funny because I told my sister one time, I said, I was having money issues and it was like, oh, this is crazy. I said, but when I had this payment that was what I thought was huge, and now a little bit later, the payment I've got is triple it, and I'm still in the same place. It's like I
Mm.
struggled with the little one, and now I struggled with the bigger one. And it's like the common denominator, right
Yeah,
here, right here,
it's so
So
true.
it's not how much money I was
Yeah,
making,
yeah,
it's how I thought about the money I was
yeah,
making. And
yeah.
so, I wish that um, this was something that they taught in schools, because
Mm,
if people could have a different mindset, and I will share really quick, I shared on my Facebook just a little bit before we got on here because I was perusing different things,
mhm.
and I had just discovered, and you may already know this, that the game Monopoly. Do you know much about it?
I mean, I've played it, but
Okay.
yeah.
Well, it was originally invented by a woman, and it was called, oh, hell, I forgot what it's called. But
Mhm.
anyway, it was, the whole purpose of it was that people were, in the game, that people helped each other, people did things to work together in all these processes and stuff. And then she had like two sets of rules. So one of them was this game, and then the other set of rules was where there was a one person that created everything to the other people's detriment. So they were trying to keep the monopoly for themselves. And there was a gentleman that got to view her game, and he took that game and developed it with Parker Brothers or whoever it is that did it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so then they manipulated her and took her rights away. So, I mean, it's a huge story, but it's like the whole game in the beginning was so that everybody learned and everybody prospered.
Mm.
And because one of the things you had to do was you got credits for how much time you worked on helping Mother Nature.
I want that game. Can we
Yeah,
bring that game back, please?
yeah.
I mean, I'm laughing at the absurdity and like, of course, right? Like, because it's so reflective of the times and our culture. And, I'm not saying I don't think that capitalism has its place, right? But like, what's the cost? What's the
Yeah,
cost of a monopoly,
yeah,
right? What's the
yeah,
cost of this self-serving behavior? And the cost is big. I
yeah.
thank you for sharing that with me. I have to go. Like if you
Yeah, I
find that,
posted.
I have to look at that.
Yes, I posted it on my
Okay,
on my
yeah.
Facebook page right
Yeah.
before we got on here, and it's just a big article that's written about the woman who created it and who she was and all these different things, because it's a very compelling
Mm.
story about her and what happened. So I just wanted to share
I love it.
that real
Someone's got to
quick.
make a movie out of that, right? That
They
feels like
should. Yeah,
that feels
yeah,
so awesome. And then they'll bring back the new, right? Here's my ideas, right?
yeah.
They're gonna do a movie about her, and then they'll bring out the anti-monopoly game.
Yes, yes. And
No.
they show pictures of it, and I actually went to a website that was about it, but it said that to come back and check again. So
Hmm.
I don't know what that means. If maybe
Mm.
it's probably just not created anymore, and so they don't have any
Mm.
I don't know. But anyway,
Mm.
I just wanted to share that real quick.
I love this story. Now my wheels are like "Doo, doo, doo, doo."
I know,
Not that
I
I'm
know, I
not that I'm
know.
going to be the one to do it, but somebody please go take this idea and
Yes,
go do that.
we've put it out in the
Yes.
ethers, so somebody's going to grab that
Receive.
and go with it.
Receive, person who
Yeah.
can do these things.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
okay. I don't remember. I have no idea how we got here, my friend.
I don't either. I don't either. It's okay. All right.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and go a little bit, fast
Okay.
forward a little bit.
Yes. Yeah.
You are, um, you're married, you got your kids,
Mhm.
and now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here's now, friends. I know it's again, boy, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this,
Yeah.
right? Like, how did that to that to that to here? Like, I don't know, some sort of
Yeah.
miraculous.
I always feel like there are no accidents. So whatever it comes up, that's what's supposed
Yes.
to be,
Okay.
right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, okay. So I was doing my own thing with business, really tutoring. We'll just say tutoring. I had a good tutoring business, and I was making money as a songwriter, as a commercial songwriter. And All of my clients came very easily. I was never serious about business. I was just like, oh yeah, this is just what I do. And then the referrals, and then the students would come, and that's what I was doing. I was also on the side creating workshops. Clearly, I do a lot of things, right? Doing workshops for women. And I
That's what
was on
entrepreneurs
a,
do.
yes, I know. I was also on a priestess path. So doing some sacred feminine work, really since my son was a baby. And been a healer since I was 18, right? Also, like all these things. So one day, like something clicked for me. I don't know if it was my age. I don't know what it was, right? It's this just we hit this point in life when I was just like, I'm gonna get serious about business. I'm gonna make money and I'm gonna find a way to be successful. And it's like as soon as I made that decision, everything fell apart. It's like I had no idea.
Yeah.
Something about that mindset, it was like, it wasn't just beginner's mindset, right? Because I like beginner's mindset. Somewhere in that process, I decided I don't know what I'm doing, and so I better pay someone else to tell me, right? I
Mm,
started to look at what everyone else was doing online and feel inadequate. I started to try to piece together little pieces of what I saw working for other people. I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on training programs, often training the same thing. I would just keep on buying
yeah.
programs to teach me the same thing, that mostly I didn't complete. And, the further that I went, giving my authority away is essentially what it was, right? I gave other people my authority away. The
Yeah.
less connected I was to who I am, what I like, how I serve, and why I even want to serve. Like,
Yeah.
why would I even want to do this? It became very much about me, right? And I say that like in just like, there's not even any judgment. That was part of my growing process. I made it about how do I make money? How do I do this? How do I do that? It
So it
was so
became
much
your
about me.
Monopoly game.
It became my own Monopoly game, a
Yeah.
1000%. See, that's why we talked about
That's
Monopoly.
right.
That's why it came in. So it all, like, it culminated. I don't know if I can call it a culmination. It's more like a crash landing. I paid, I don't know, I won't even say the number, for a year-long program in a mastermind with a woman who, again, I was doing the spiritual work, and she promised this like new earth, very spiritual perspective on marketing. Very pressury sales call. Gave a couple of $1,000 deposit. 2 months into this thing, and I was a mess because the program was so opposite of who I am. It was
Oh, wow.
so opposite of who I was. It actually reminded me of who I was.
Ah, well, it served its purpose.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And so I brought my concerns to the leader, and she basically tore me to shreds and told me I was self-righteous. I was basically like, I feel like these tactics are manipulative and I can't do them. Are there other options? And she's just like, you're self-righteous and you need to go work on yourself.
Oh my
And
God.
I had spent all that money, paid in full.
Did she give you a refund?
Well, I had to fight, and I got not even a third of it back.
Wow.
But I basically just stopped showing up. I hit this point where I was just like, I was so sick from going on the calls. Like, it was making me physically ill. I'm like, I have to walk away from this money. And it was the rest of the money that I had. Like, it was kind of like one of those, like, don't worry, you'll get your money back tenfold. It was
Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
those.
I love
You know
those.
them.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We all know them.
Fell for those before too.
Right. So long story, still long, but maybe a little shorter. At my bottom, somebody, like, I had heard of human design and I had looked at my human design, but never really got into it. And somebody said, I don't even know how, is one of these like little divine things that come in. Someone said, go, like, you should get a human design reading. And I'm like, I guess I'll get a human, like, I don't know who I am. Maybe this will tell me who I am. And I went for this human design reading, and it woke me back up
Nice.
to who I am in a really, really deep way. And that was the moment when all of a sudden the pain that I went through and that struggle that I went through, going through that whole ordeal with this woman in the program, I saw that it was all leading me up to that moment. Just like you said, there are no mistakes, right? And I knew, like in my mind, I'm like, okay, I know this is happening for me, but when you're going through the shit, it does not feel like it's happening
Mm-mm.
for you.
Doesn't
It's
feel
just
good.
it's like placating the
It
pain,
takes a
right?
minute.
Like, yeah, yeah, exactly.
Sometimes a
It's
long minute.
you need the perspective of
Yeah.
being out of it to really be able to look back and see just how much it helped you. So from there, human design, I don't know if you're familiar. I think
Hmm.
we talked about it. You're familiar with it. Lots of
Yeah.
people are now. There's a sister system called the Gene Keys, and I really got into that. It's basically it's brilliant, and that became my passion. And I started to use human design, mostly Gene Keys, and through my own healing and building myself back up and coming back into my center, and then like channeling my entrepreneurship and my offers through these really aligned channels of like, this is who I am, this is how I want to serve. Then I started to share it with entrepreneurs, and I started to do readings, right? This is over a few years.
Hmm.
And so it just became this thing where like my passion became like, I want to teach you how to build your business, but but what I really want to do is I want to teach you how to build your business your way,
Yeah. To be
because that's what
you,
I
your
never had.
business.
That's what I needed so
Yeah.
badly then.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I had to learn the hard way. Now in human design, my profile is a 3-6, and every profile, it's like these two numbers that you can look up your profile, and maybe
I'm a
we'll drop a
1-3.
link. You're a 1-3. So you have the line 3 too. So anytime you got a line 3, you'll see the decimal points are threes in your human design. That means you're supposed to get it wrong and refine it, right?
Yeah.
We it's trial and error, and it's make a big mess and then figure out what works. Why? Not just for you, but you take that wisdom that you
And
gain and you
teach.
share it with other people, right? And
Yeah.
so like look
Yeah.
at you with your story, with how you like overcame. Like I just love, like, so classically 1-3 that you were like, I'm just going to learn it for myself. And then I was like, I love that, right? Because ones love to just learn information, and 3, you got to test it out, and then you got to share it and serve with it. It's
Yeah.
really, really beautiful. And I'm a 3-6, and a 6 line basically acts like a 3 for like the first half of their lives. So it's like lots of mess and lots of trial and error. So I'm gonna take a breath, because I know we're like kind of moving towards the end of this, but
We're good.
yeah,
We're
okay, yeah.
good. Yeah,
So
we don't. I mean, I have a paid Zoom, so we could talk forever.
okay.
We could split it into
Perfect.
two. It doesn't matter.
Perfect.
Whatever. I
Okay.
want you to get your story out. But let me
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
you one
So
thing.
so essentially, like, this work, I, I'm a refiner. That's what I do, right? I
Hmm.
said I try things out and I test them. And so in doing all this work with these mostly women, mostly female entrepreneurs who are very soul led, I started to see where human design and Gene Keys was helpful, and where they needed a little bit of refinement. And so what I did, and kind of this is where what I'm working on now in my business,
So you're kind of filling in the gaps with what
I'm
you're doing
filling
now.
in the gaps. And
Okay.
I really, my passion is making things accessible to people. I really like, I don't believe in gatekeeping. And I think that when there's a powerful system that people benefit from, we can't have overly complicated systems and overly complicated language, because that creates a barrier from people being able to access it. And so
Yeah.
one day, I just, I don't even know how it happened. I sat down and I could say channeled, I can say refined, I can say decoded. I basically translated all of the gene keys and many aspects of human design through an entrepreneurial lens. And I
Okay.
created a map that lets people understand what their unique genius is in 13 areas of business. And it's called the Success Codex. And that is where all of my work and all of my energy is going now, because all that I want to do is help people be more of themselves and make money doing it. Like,
Right.
I think that
So do
yeah,
you do like a reading using
yeah.
the gene keys and
Mhm.
the human design, and then after the reading you show them how to use
So
Your
I actually have
code?
my it's my own graphic. It's my
Okay.
own codex. It's like a different picture.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't I don't know when this is going live, but in just a few weeks, people will be able to access this through a very big website called
All
geneticmatrix.com,
right. Well,
where
cool.
a lot of
We'll
readers
definitely
use
have to
it.
include that information
Yes,
because
yeah,
as long as I'm
absolutely.
not backlogged with how many people
Yeah,
I've had on podcast, it goes
yeah.
out pretty quick because I don't edit
Okay.
anything. Yeah.
Well, I mean, whenever, hey, if you check genetic matrix and I'm not there, check again in a week.
Yeah.
I don't but yeah, so people will be able to, just the same way with human design, you enter your birth date and your birth, time, date, location, and it will populate your human design. It's going to populate your success codex. S-
Okay.
And and so essentially I've been doing a lot of readings with people, and I've got big plans for this year, really training other entrepreneurs and coaches how they can use the system with their clients. I'm
Nice.
really excited about it, right? It's
Yeah. So I don't know who's going to be watching, and I
Mhm,
didn't even mention this before we got in here. So if I'm putting you on the spot, just say I don't know yet. Okay.
mhm, mhm.
So if you want, is there something you want to offer the guests that if they watch this and they reach out to you, they can do something special?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I would love, so what I'm doing now, right? Like as I'm getting this program, the training program ready, is I've just been doing a ton of readings and I love it. People are walking away with like mind blown moments. So if you're interested, it's really for, just to let you know, it is for soul led entrepreneurs. So you don't necessarily have to know what you want to offer, but if you know that you are here to be of service and you want to do that in a way that's really deeply aligned, because, like, let's face it, when you're aligned with yourself, you're going to hit a lot less resistance than when you're trying to be like somebody else.
Right.
Ask
Right.
me how I know. Right? So,
Well, I
if,
will
yeah,
say I
yeah.
had a Gene Key read, not Gene
Oh,
Key.
you
I
did.
would love to have the Gene Key, but I had the human design reading, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
a manifester. I don't remember what the hell it is.
Manifesting generator. Does that sound right?
What?
Manifesting generator.
It was
Yeah.
2 words. I don't remember.
I think you
But
gave me your info to look up. You want me to
yeah.
check? You want me
Yeah,
to check?
yeah.
I'm gonna check.
Because I was gonna say that one of the things that when I had that reading is that I start 1,000 things and I just go gung ho and I love it. But then, it's like, well, that one looks really nice. And then I'll kind of revert. And when she did my reading, she said, that's natural for you.
Yeah.
And so just take that. And these are some things that you can do to harvest all of that gifts that you have. And I said, "Oh, that is so good," because I always felt like something was wrong with me because I
Oh
did
yeah.
that, and I'm
Yeah.
always busy, always learning, and I'll have people that say, "Oh, you do too much." But
Yeah.
oh, but
That's your nature. I just looked it up. You're a manifesting generator, and a
okay.
1000% you are meant to do the things that really keep you lit up and keep you excited.
Yeah.
And I think in our culture, it's so like we're just in this kind of hyper masculine still, which is like you focus on one thing and you move towards the one thing. And some of us are just not built that way.
I have a
I
hard
mean,
time with that.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a man, I'm a generator. I'm not a manifesting generator, but I have a lot of initiatory energy. And like, I have a few things that would make me look like a manifesting generator. And I have the same thing. I can't tell you how many people in my life told me, you're never going to be successful because you can't just choose one thing. And I just went, "Psh, watch me,
Yeah.
watch me,
Yeah.
and then secretly I'm like, I'm never going to be successful.
Yeah.
But I found my way, right?
Yeah,
Like, and
yeah. That's it, that's
that's
it.
the whole point, is we find our way. But I love that you brought this up, right? Because I think that it's true for human design, and it's true for gene keys, and it's true for the success codex. When we understand the way that we're built, the way that we're meant to do it, we get the permission slip to do it the way we always wanted to do it.
Yeah,
Like,
because I
that's what it
swear before
is.
I got that, I felt like, I was supposed to be following, what the other people said with focus on this
Mhm.
one thing. When you get that done, then you can do something else. But
Mhm.
it never felt right. But so I thought, well, what is wrong with me? Why can I
Mm.
not focus on this and stop with this. So I think that's where all that shiny object syndrome comes from,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
because that's how I felt, it was like, "Oh, squirrel,"
Hmm.
and I always felt like it was something wrong with me. So that just gave me, "Ah, that's part of my gift. I love
Hmm.
it."
Absolutely. And it is, and it is. It's funny. I have a program called Create and Launch Your Offer by Design. It
Mhm.
actually starts in like 2 weeks. And it's one of the things that like I love doing is we look at what your type is and we say like, well, if you love to be able to put your hands on lots of things, how can we create an offer that lets you do that? Right? It's so, and I love kind of brainstorming these pieces of like, there's an infinite number of things, ways that we can structure our offers, and an infinite number of things that we can offer, so we might as well choose one that works really really well for us, that leaves us feeling satisfied and fulfilled, and like we get to use these natural gifts like to their extent. We really get
Mhm.
to honor them, because some people are not like that, right? Some people are like, I can do one thing and I only want to do one thing, so they would not excel in the same type of offer structure, right, that maybe you would, or maybe that I would.
Right,
And
right,
it's important to be able um to really like refine the things that we want. Like it always starts with us
right.
anyway, right? Like human design is not the guru. It's not meant to be that. It's meant to help us refine what we already have. We start with your passion. We start with your why. We start with your, your desire to serve.
Yeah.
And then we layer in this to just refine it and make it better for you.
Yeah, I love the thing that I love about those 2 things, the Gene Keys and the human design, is not that I don't look at it as like the magic pill or
Mhm.
whatever, but it's almost like it almost gives you, and I think what you're talking about that you're creating right now might even do it a lot more effectively, because I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure
Mhm.
you said it fills in the gaps.
Mhm.
But it's like it kinda gives you almost like a map of what your brain and your personality is,
Yes.
so that, because we spent, if you're most of us have spent our whole lives with other people trying to form our personality and who we are from what they wanted us to do,
That's right.
and so we kind of, that's why we get so far away from it, and we start trying to take on the mold that they've given us. And when we start coming out of that mold a little bit, it's like we feel like, uh-oh, we're doing something wrong. This can't
That's
be
right.
right. And so I loved it that it just kind of gave me permission that all the things that I felt were actually me. And I
Yes.
wasn't, it was very bizarre to have something like that. Just all of a sudden, it was like suddenly I sat up and said, okay, I'm a manifester and I do this,
Yes.
and that's just the way it is.
Yes. I love it. My heart's going like, "Woo!" I love hearing your story about this, because yeah, that was totally my experience, right? And
Yeah.
like, I would say like the gaps that the Success Codex fills are like human design and gene keys. They are a personal and spiritual development tool. The Success Codex, everything is filtered through this lens of how can this help me as an entrepreneur, right? So we're looking at, not to go too deep into it, but human design and the gene keys, they're based on the planets and what gates are in the planets. So my system also is, but instead of looking at like, I'm trying to think of an example, like instead of looking at Venus from like regular relationship, right? Whatever key code is in your Venus, we're looking at it as about like, well, what's the primary relationship in business? Client. So what Venus helps us understand how we attract clients by being ourselves, right? And so we look at these keys, and the keys are um like permission to be ourselves, rebirth, how do we move through change, how do we take initiative, visibility, brand, client attraction, our capacity to hold more money, clients, etc., expansion. Like these are some of the pieces that we're looking at. So it is all very business, but again, like I would say the biggest gap, the biggest thing that it fills is actually the language, by making it more accessible, right? Because
Okay.
again, if I am told I am words that I don't really understand, it can only take me so far, right? The point of Gene Keys is you learn these things about yourself and then you sit back and you contemplate, right? Which is, I mean, I
Well,
love
I
that.
actually the gentleman who started the Gene Keys,
Yeah.
he's
Richard
on
Rudd. Yeah.
yeah, he's I watch him on YouTube and he's actually I'm part of some program that he's in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so he will actually talk about the Gene Keys and things like that. And it's still half the time up here, you know.
Yeah.
I bought the book, I opened the book up and I think, fuck, I don't
Wrote a book.
understand what this is. Oh, let me find a page that I do understand. And so
Um,
I just get confused on this is
mhm.
supposed to be my gene key, but I'm supposed to know what these other gene keys are and what they do and how they relate to mine. And it was like, So I love that you're doing something that simplifies things. I
Yes.
guess
Yeah.
that to me, that's what it sounds like. It simplifies it so that it's speaking. It's almost like people that translate the Bible, you know, from Hebrew, and they keep breaking it down until then you get the New Living Version where it's like, yes, he said no, you know, it's
Right. Yeah. It's like, can we just use the language that he
yeah,
actually used?
yeah. So it's, you know, to me, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
It sounds like what you do is you break it into like the new version, so it's spoken in
Yep.
today's language, and we can just understand it.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. Because just like you said, it's it's like it's this thing of like it's just not accessible enough. It's not accessible enough. And if you've got 2 years to contemplate a gene key, good on you,
Yeah,
right? But I would say personally, like as an entrepreneur, right? Because that's the point of this system is we don't have 2 years to contemplate. So
yeah, you'll
whereas
be
the
out of
gene key
business in 2
says
years.
contemplation, I say information, application, integration, right?
Yeah,
Like we get the information and now we apply it to our business because
yeah,
that's where we learn about it. We don't learn about it here. We learn from doing. That's how we become more of ourselves, not by thinking about being ourselves, by
right.
being ourselves.
Right. And you
Right?
know,
That and then we
that's why I
integrate.
started my podcast was because I feel like, and I don't know how much of this is all the molding was done from being a child, but I
Mm,
felt like I always had to really filter everything I say, everything
mhm,
I do,
mhm,
because I
mhm,
didn't want to upset this person or disappoint this person or whatever. And so it was like, oh, I always had problems with my throat chakra because of it, because I didn't speak
mm,
up. And I still have problems with that today, every now and then, I will tell you.
mm,
But I got to the place where it was like, I want to just be able to speak and say whatever the hell I want to say.
mm,
And I did this podcast challenge with Stacey Lauren on Facebook. It's the Do the Thing.
mhm,
And when I did that, she broke it down in so many little small pieces, which sounds like what you do.
mhm.
And all of a sudden, I had a podcast. And it
Yeah.
was like, that's why I don't edit it. I don't do anything because it's like I spent my whole life editing everything.
Mm,
I don't want to edit anymore. I want
mhm,
to just be me. If my camera's not working right, like right now, my lighting's off, you know, it's like, what the hell? Who cares? And, you know, and so when we get through with this, you know, it'll be exactly as it is right now. I won't change a thing. You know, I'm not going to go in and take out the ums and the ohs and any of that stuff. So it is what it is. And that's what I love about my podcast and having you as a guest is
mm.
it's just gives me a chance to speak and other people a chance to just speak and be and tell their truth.
I love it. I just love I love that. You know, I think some people might be like, "Well, I don't like editing, so I'm not going to edit." There's like a purpose behind it, right? Like it's a statement to actually let this be authentically real. Like
Yeah.
it's I love that. I really do. Especially in a world where we're just shown these like perfected versions of everything and it's boring. Am I
Yeah.
the only person who thinks it's boring? Because I think it's boring. I want to know the truth,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
I did a live a couple of days ago because I was having a really tough morning, I will
Mm,
say. And I
mhm,
got on and I was rawer than I've ever been
mhm,
with crying and talking about things. And one of the things that I told everybody on this live, and I don't know how many people actually saw it, it doesn't really matter. I said it.
mhm,
Um, but I told them that the next time they see somebody whose life looks perfect, just realize that that's a little snapshot of that moment, and you don't have a clue what's going on inside and what chaos might be on the other side of the camera.
That's
And
right.
so, for one thing, to not judge yourself against somebody else's perceived perfection, and not to chastise yourself for not being where they are, but to also everybody that you see, send them love and grace, because they're hiding what's going on because they don't feel capable of letting it out, and they need more love and grace than you're aware of.
Mm, I love that. And it's so true, right? Like we have these moments, and really, what does the perfection do for most of us? It either, I mean, for some people it inspires, but I think for most of us it's just, it triggers that like compare and despair,
Yeah.
right? That like just
Yeah.
looking at it and feeling like we can't measure up, but it's
Yeah, see,
true.
that's what some of that does to me. It's like, there is no way I can even compare to that, you know?
Hmm.
But I will say sometimes they're showing me things that I wouldn't want anyway, you know?
Right? And that's the thing. You're bringing the discernment there, right? Because,
Yeah.
and I think that that's also kind of a skill that we need to develop, right? This
Yeah.
discernment to be able to look and say and even ask ourselves, right? Because we're shown things in a way of like, hey, you want this.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
got to go, hey, do I want this? Right? Like, do I actually want, I don't know if I want this.
Yeah.
That was big for me. Like I, for this year and for the Success Codex, I'm really taking a different approach with social media because I've been running the Instagram thing. I'm tired of it. I don't really want it.
Yeah.
It'll be a part of it, but it's not going to be the bulk of what I'm doing. For that reason, my whole feed is filled with business coaches, and if I'm told what I'm doing wrong one more time, I'm gonna like that's. Oh, here's the one mistake you're making. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my
I
god, what is
know.
it
I know.
now?
I get those ads all the time.
Right?
Here's the
Yeah.
3 things that you can do to
Yes.
have 1,000,000 followers.
I'm
Okay.
like, stop. And then I
And what do
click it.
I
I'm
want
like, why
1,000,000
am I
followers
reading
for?
this?
Yeah, it is definitely very interesting.
Yeah.
But go ahead and share with everybody what that website is, and
Yes.
when it will be available, and
Yes.
then other ways that they can connect with you. And just to let everybody know that she's going to give me a list of ways to connect with her, and I
Mhm.
will have that in the comments, in the description, so that you can access her in all of the capacities that she has.
Yay. Yeah. So, I mean, the easiest way to get in contact with me is through Facebook or Instagram, and it's just my name. I know the spelling might be a little bit weird, so I'll just spell it out: Ankhara Rose, Rose. So Ankhara Rose, and it's at Ankhara Rose on Facebook and at Ankhara Rose on Instagram. I do have a website, thesuccesscodex.com, and it's almost ready. It might be ready by the time this is live. You can go and click it and see if you can find it when whoever you are as you're listening, and if you want, and all of the info about what I'm offering will be there. But I really would like to just offer like a special rate if you're interested in a Success Codex reading with me. I want to give like a special rate for just your listeners,
Okay.
so I'll send a link for that as well.
All right. Wonderful. So, I so appreciate you being here and being patient with me, directing us in a million different places.
I loved it. I loved it. Give me more. It was so much fun. Thank you so much for this invitation. I feel like it just like made my week, and it was so like you're just so real, and so like I love the questions that you ask, and you're so present, and you've so much joy, and I just know that
Oh,
everybody who listens to this just like they're just eating up your joy. That's just
thank
yeah.
you. That is so sweet. I appreciate you and you taking the time to be on here and to make an offer to everybody. I so appreciate that. So,
Mm.
um, I would like to ask everybody, or to say to everybody before we go, my last thoughts are: the best way to predict the future is create it. So think about what you're creating.
Absolutely.
Mwah.